Greetings YouTube, Captain Machine here, back for another video. I'm going to do another response to hammershitsteak about his Werewolf, the Apocalypse time period video. Because he's right, 100% right. Apart from the Stargazers aren't dead in Werewolf the Apocalypse. They are retreated completely from the Garen Nation to the point where it's inconceivable that one of them would still be around. But there are a couple of rare exceptions to that, but they're not recommended as player characters. In fact, if you get the compendium, it gives you the full rules for them and says, here are the rules for them, but it's probably not best to use them. And although, to be fair to hammershitsteak, the common consensus in the Apocalypse, as in the event, the Apocalypse, is that the Stargazers are the first to go, because whatever they're guarding, whatever their monasteries are sat on top of in Thailand and Tibet, is the first thing to go. Whatever it is important to the worm, and it goes. So he's half right. They are not dead, they are removed from the nation, but they're going to die. And it's just a matter of time. I want to talk about Werewolf Dark Ages, because Werewolf Dark Ages has a soft spot in my heart, it really does. And I briefly want to talk about the two books that came out for it. First of all, I'm really happy to see hammershitsteak has the paperback version, which is the first edition, which came out as a direct supplement to Werewolf the Apocalypse, and is a really good book in my opinion. The artwork for it is fabulous, the direction they take with it, in terms of explaining how everything works, is amazing. You get a lot of good background of how the universe of the werewolves exists during that time period. And at the back you get an amazing appendix, which tells you how vampire disciplines react with werewolf physiology and werewolf gifts. And that's really handy because I don't think any such document has existed since then, or before. It only appears in this one book, so if you can find it and you're running one of those chronicles where you're constantly in conflict with werewolves and vampires, it's worth getting the book just for that. Although I think it's out in PDF now, so you might be able to get it that way. The second edition, the hardback version, is in my opinion a lesser, it's a poorer cousin, because it's not a, well, first of all, it's not a direct source book for the Apocalypse anymore. It becomes a source book for Vampire Dark Ages, and that doesn't sound like too much of a bad thing, but it does mean that you are repeating yourself in terms of stuff that you should already know, because the first one was a supplement directly to Werewolf the Apocalypse. Already assumed you had the werewolf rules and therefore didn't go over what the rules for being a werewolf were. So what you tend to get in the new one is it wastes a lot of time and energy, and mainly importantly page space, re-explaining werewolves again. And I don't think it does a particularly good job of that either. And the spacing and the format and the artwork is not in my liking. There are a couple of really good pictures in there. I think the pictures that separate the chapters are really good, but the rest of it I'm not a big fan of. And he is 100% right, hammershitsteak, when he talks about the fact that during that time period you should really be doing one single tribe, because multi-tribe packs weren't an issue or weren't a commonplace thing up until about Werewolf Wild West. It was because of things like the Storm Eater, where it happened, where the werewolves basically realised that now was not the time to bicker with each other, now was the time to get on the offensive, because the worm is a real threat. But he's right, the worm is not a massive threat during the Dark Ages. It does show up its face every now and then, but not to the degree it does in any other time period. And I ran two chronicles, which I want to briefly talk about. The first one was a Fenrir chronicle. Now, Fenrir is what the Get Fenris become, because they changed the name. I don't remember what time period they changed the name in, so I'm sorry about that, guys. But it was basically everyone got to play Vikings, and we as a gaming group love Vikings to death, because we played multiple different versions of Viking games and we love it to bits. Us Brits have a weird fascination with Vikings. I can't explain it. They're not native to the area, though they did settle here and integrate themselves into the population. For the most part, the concept of the Viking is, I don't know if I'm saying this right, a Scandinavian thing, and we are obsessed with them like you won't believe. In fact, I used to do Viking reenactments with spears and swords, so I got in depth with that. And they loved it because they got to go outside. And it wasn't just bound in cities, it was a lot of wilderness stuff, talking to spirits, doing rites, encountering rogue spirits or such and so forth, and other supernatural entities that don't necessarily exist in the modern time. So they really enjoyed that, and they were all tooled to the nines to fight worm. And they really were, because this is coming off the back of my Werewolf the Apocalypse game, where the worm was a major feature in it, and it surprised them that the worm didn't show up once in the entire chronicle. In fact, the bad guy, if I call it a bad guy, was the Weaver, because the whole point of the chronicle was to tell the story from the werewolf's perspective of how Christianity basically migrated into the Scandinavian countries. And the conclusion they come to at the end is that, for the most part, it's not tainted, it's just a human thing. But there were some examples of taint within it which they had to scourge. So, I think they were fighting like Romanesque legionnaires with rigid thinking, which made them, given them slight weaver powers. You had monks that were effectively weaver mages. And then at the end, the big bad at the end was a weaver-tainted warder, which is what the Glasswalkers become. Because again, they changed the name quite a lot, the warders do. So that was rather entertaining. And the second campaign was a campaign that never really finished, so I will want to continue in the near future. So if my guys are up for it, I will probably finish it and I'll let you know how it went on. But the campaign was about the Fenrir, and the whole tribe. The pack was a pup pack. They were ranked 0 effectively, and because very few people had played the game before, and those that had played it a long time ago, I got to spend the first session teaching them via moots and stories from how werewolves work and how shifting works. So it wasn't just a case of you roll these dice to shift. It was like a character was explaining to them how you shift, and then they rolled dice. So that was rather entertaining. And they had to do on their rite of passage. Now, the cairn they were coming from was a really small cairn, a level 1 cairn, only had 1 pack on it at any one time, more or less. And it was very fundamental in its way of thinking because, as you may or may not know, the totem for the entire tribe of Fianna is stag. The totem for the cairn in question was stag, and the totem for every single tribe that had ever been there was also stag. So basically they were very devout followers of this spirit. And what the goal was to go on the rite of passage and get the blessing of stag and come back and be part of the cairn and such and so forth, and everything was happy-go-lucky. I even enjoyed it because I got to do some role-playing in terms of the fact is that a kinfolk from the cairn took a liking to one of the characters, and he had to fight for her because her brother, who was an Aroon, an actual proper werewolf, didn't like the idea of those two copulating. So there you go. So that was rather entertaining. Got again a lot of outdoorsy stuff. They got to speak some Krovaks because, in my opinion, if you're going to do a Fianna campaign, you have to have some Krovaks in there, which are the Were-Ravens, because they're a big deal for that tribe. Because the Fiannas, although will never admit it to anybody, did during the War of the Rage hide the Krovaks so they wouldn't be found, and as such they have a fealty bond between each other. And when they completed the rite of passage, Stag was about to come up to them and give him his blessing, and he got chased off by the spirit of a lion, mountain lion more effectively, and they're like, what's going on here? And then they realised as they were walking back and they could see the spirit of mountain lion stalking them, that lion had become their totem, which was confirmed by the theurge back at the cairn, which caused a huge stink because to them it was like, well, how dare you come back with a different totem? Especially a totem for a different tribe, the White Howlers, because this was set in the pullout of the Romans in Britain, or just before the pullout of Romans from Britain. So the White Howlers in my timeline were still around, and the White Howlers, as you may or may not know, become the Black Sparrow Dancers, which are the bad guys. And the whole idea of the chronicle was that Lion would urge them north, and they would go to Scotland and find out what had happened to the White Howlers, because the White Howlers had disappeared. In fact, on their journey they encountered a kinfolk of a White Howler who couldn't speak the language because he spoke Pict, and they spoke whatever Angles speak. I'm not up on my history, I haven't studied it in a while. But they got a rough idea from him what was going on. In fact, he was carrying 2 fetishes on him. For a kinfolk, that's kind of impressive. And they were going back to Scotland to find out what happened, because to him, all the White Howlers, all the werewolves to him had disappeared. All the cairns were left unguarded, and he didn't know what the hell was going on, and he thought he'd come south to find some other werewolves to figure it out. And that's where the campaign ended, so I may pick that up again in the future. Thanks for your time, guys. Goodbye.